This is just a chance for me to share some of my toxic traits. I hope you can understand. And I'll be crying and laughing and sharing videos. I choose to only have a surface level understanding of astrology. They are my favorite or ultimate girl group in general, not just K-pop. They want it to be the best girl group ever. On July 5th, they're coming back with a variety show. Sometimes I'd wonder how close she is to other members because she's so independent. I hope that this next segment can provide even more context to the safe space that I hope this podcast creates. Just another awkward black girl. Hey y'all, my name is Ada Grace, and I host Black Girl Talks Pop, where I talk about pop culture and all the hits and misses in between. For my second year at KPSN Podcast Fest, I decided to take the very unnecessary task of interviewing myself with the pre-recorded Meet the Host segment. In this episode, I'll share 5 facts about me, why I started this podcast, and what keeps me going. I hope this podcast can offer encouragement to you as you channel your creativity in any field, whether it's making sure you're excellent in your 9 to 5 or taking the steps to venture out and start your own business. Before I talk about myself for around 30 minutes straight, let's hear a special message from KPSN and remember why we're all here for this incredible event. Black Girl Talks Pop is joining K-Pop Social Night in raising funds for Minority Mental Health Awareness Fund this July at KPSN Podcast Fest 2022. This is the third and possibly final year that K-pop and K-drama podcasts from around the globe are coming together for a special cause through this event, so don't miss it. I believe in the efforts of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, and I want you to know that you are not alone on your wellness journey. Learn more about this event and how you can add your donation at www.kpsnfund.com. That's www.kpsnfund.com. Take a trip down memory lane to a time where magic and friendship always saved the day. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to begin this episode with 5 fun facts that I believe inform my personality and perspective. Let's begin with the fact that's very important. I'm tall. At 5'10", I'm probably taller than you. Identifying and also being tall are very important to me because I think it explains why I'm not easily impressed. When you have to physically look down at most people, I think it just tends to happen that way. There are very few people who I've experienced who are shorter than me and are also imposing by their presence alone, and I think that's a superpower. I admire those who don't identify as tall physically, but have that energy because they seem so at ease with themselves. I'm still learning how to get my limbs in line, and I get jealous of shorter people because they're so compact, you know? However, I do have empathy for those who ask for help to pick things off shelves. I'm also suspicious of other tall people. Maybe it's because I'm used to sticking out like a sore thumb, but when I see another tall person, I wonder, what are you doing here? Especially if they're taller than me, then I'll ask myself, how did that happen? As if I'm the only one with tall family members. This is just a chance for me to share some of my toxic traits. I hope you can understand. I wonder how shorter people do it. Do you live in fear? Or do you eventually get used to looking up at most people? If you're someone who sees high ceilings as an aesthetic instead of a necessity, let me know your thoughts. Another quality about me that would be obvious if you could see me in real life is that I'm black. I link to some of my videos where you can see that I'm just another awkward black girl. I think us nerdy, geeky, awkward black girls are doing pretty well for ourselves these days, so I've loved finding my tribe by subscribing to YouTube channels and podcasts of black women who love K-pop and K-dramas like I do. I'd like to share more about my black experience by letting you know that I am first-generation Nigerian American. I am so proud of the values of community and chosen family, and I've seen through the example of my parents, uncles, and aunties. The times where I have felt truly and fully loved have often come from people who aren't related to me, but they have repeatedly shown up and offered a listening ear, a place to stay, a great meal, and/or unforgettable life advice. I admire the way that my parents have opened up their home and hearts to people who have left their established jobs and lives behind to come to America and create a new life for their families. But I am always touched to see others extend that undeserved kindness and favor to us. I am from the Yoruba tribe, and there is a tradition during the engagement ceremony where each side's family takes turns to dance into the room. I've loved seeing my parents represent the chosen family of those who have embraced them, and I look forward to having my aunties and uncles dance in celebration of my own wedding. Most of them won't be blood, but they are bonded to me forever as their love has been shown to me and my family over and over again. I strive to protect and uplift my Black culture and others, and I look forward to passing my own culture on. The third fact that's not important, but it is interesting, is that I'm a Taurus. I choose to only have a surface level understanding of astrology, but it's been an insightful way for me to learn about myself. I've also learned how powerful a label can be. I did my chart online and learned that Leo is my sun sign, and I have to admit that it gave me a confidence boost. I've always thought I was quiet, but I think I'm actually selectively talkative, and I've been praying for discernment on when and how to share my thoughts. I love learning about Tauruses in pop culture, and I've noticed that some share a quiet confidence. Sunny from Girls' Generation has always been one of my favorite members, and I love that she had an understanding of who she needed to be to stand out in the group. She's cute, witty, and always knows how to work the camera, and she's been able to make her own lane as a regular guest and host of variety shows, as well as being a musical actress. Sometimes I'd wonder how close she is to other members because she's so independent, but I also admire how she fully believes in herself, openly shares her goals, and seems completely content with the life she's made for herself. Contentment is such an underrated gift, and we often try to look for it outside of ourselves. I think one key to fulfillment is realizing that joy is a personal and daily choice that cannot be determined by others' actions and circumstances. In her professional life, I think Sunny figured that out pretty quickly, and I applaud her for it. I'm still trying to keep that in mind, but maybe we can all remind each other as we go toward our own pursuits. The fourth fun fact about me is that I'm a Soan, aka a fan of the K-pop group SNSD or Girls' Generation. They are my favorite or ultimate girl group in general, not just K-pop. My biases are Taeyeon and Yuri, but Tiffany is my ultimate bias across K-pop. I've created a special label called Favorite, not necessarily a bias record, but someone I've appreciated more over the years. My favorites are Soyeon and Sunny. As you can tell, I'm a TTS supremacist, sorry shy. My favorite Korean comeback is Mr. Mr., and my favorite Japanese comeback is Galaxy Supernova. I've been a Soan since SNSD comeback I Got a Boy in 2013. I had seen the promotional video for IMSM Town in 2012, but I wasn't sure that K-pop was for me. As a Black person, the mainstream society tells you who you can and can't be, and that creates a self-consciousness and self-loathing that can manifest itself in the way that Black people limit themselves and each other to meet standards that were meant to exclude us. It wasn't until I saw the YouTube channel Tubin Jin Jung Keys reaction to I Got a Boy and started watching them, Dre, Afro Minx, K-Spazzing, Jose Ochoa, and so many other Black and brown creators that I realized that K-pop could be a safe and fun space for me too. What I love about my Girls' Generation We Don't Stop, Not a Fantasy, This Is Right for Me, is their pursuit of excellence. From the beginning, they wanted to be the best girl group ever. Girls' Generation's success opened the door for so many girl groups. They contributed to the How You Wave as they promoted in the US on the heels of another girl group, Wonder Girls, who started the trend of groups doing US promotions with their comeback, Nobody. However, Girls' Generation's performances, with their unique concepts, creative formations, and most importantly, legendary vocals and perfect precision, set the standard of excellence that we expect from both boy and girl groups, as we got to see it from Girls' Generation for 10 years. On July 5th, they're coming back with the variety show, and on that day, please leave a message at the beep, 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 beep. I'll be crying and laughing and sharing videos on Twitter until I can watch the English subs and cry and laugh and share more videos on Twitter, okay? Last but never least, the final fact about me is that I'm a Christian. As a kid, it was so easy being a Christian to fit in at church or to coast through life because it's what I've always known. But it wasn't until I left home that I had the opportunity to choose the love of God for myself. I've learned that the hope of my faith is to know that I am never alone because I can lean on the Lord. And I've decided to give Him everything, including this podcast. The prayer at the end of each episode is meant to not only provide encouragement, but also thank God for helping me finish what can feel like an impossible task and set a standard that will encourage me to choose my words as I share my thoughts on pop culture, music, whatever, with you. Well, those are all my fun facts. I hope that this next segment can provide even more context to the safe space that I hope this podcast creates for Black fans, especially other dark-skinned Black women like me. See you there! Why do you have a podcast? Great question. I have 3 reasons, and I'll share the first in the next segment. Let's talk about these enemies of progress that block the path towards Black liberation. In this Enemies of Progress, I want to talk about the most frustrating obstacle of Black liberation, the hypocrisy that happens within the progressive movement. During the most recent Black into K-pop space, there was a lengthy discussion of the harm that happens when supposed allies actively participate in racism or stand aside and watch it happen because they don't want to pay the cost of actually standing up for what they claim to believe. They want to reap the benefits of saying they care about Black people without actually doing the work of standing up to the racist behavior from artists and other fans that makes the fan experience a constant emotional struggle for Black journalists and Black fans. As a Black woman, I have seen this behavior in so many layered ways, from the aspect of misogyny, racism, or misogynoir. However, in this segment, I want to focus on what I believe is the most cloying type of misogyny, which is harder to shake because most people don't take the time to call it out since it seems to be so innocent. I want to talk to and about the women and femmes who claim to care about the woman in Korea and say they are appalled by the way that their careers are limited by fat phobia, ageism, and the predatory behavior of the older men who run the entertainment industry, but without being asked, they will introduce their fan experience by proudly saying that they don't listen to girl groups. If they've ever bothered to check out a girl group, they'll name the same 3 groups: Mamamoo, Red Velvet, and recently, Oh My Girl. They'll act like these ladies' discography successfully transcended gender, and by doing so, met their strict requirements of what good K-pop should sound and look like. As we gather around the red table, my first question for these saints is, do you mean it? Do you truly mean it when you say you care about women and girls in the entertainment industry? What you do in your private life, not just your vices but your interests and hobbies, reveals the truth about you. How you chase joy and how you find escape are the actual reflections of who you are. If you claim to support women, your playlist, your streaming habits, how you frivolously spend money on CDs, concert tickets, and merchandise should reflect that. If it doesn't, you need to be honest about why. I have my own theory, which I'll share soon, but I want the truth, without flimsy excuses like, I just don't like cute concepts and all of my music sounds the same. Why do you scoff when you see young girls and women expressing their happiness, but you'll foam at the mouth when you see your favorite male idol make finger hearts in a concert video, or sport a casual look in the dorm, or have any display of affection, whether it's a hug or play fighting with another member? How can you say that all girl groups sound the same when you rarely listen to girl groups? These are the same people who act like their tastes are so versatile when most boy group concepts are just different variations of the hip-hop driven, hip thrust powered beast idol concepts. Many of these groups have at least one rapper that raps fast, one vocal whose singing is passable as long as a high note is reached on the CD, and one dancer who can slither on stage and make every move look as extra extra, the company finally let me have an Insta, as possible. If these types of boy group fans are actually looking for a variation of sounds and themes, they would support girl groups because female idols are not restricted by hypermasculinity. Their stories aren't limited by the fear that they're expressing too many emotions and are therefore stepping out of the acceptable bounds of their gender identity. They can have a song about working hard to accomplish their dreams in an industry that often sets them up for failure. They can have a song about infidelity and vengeance and communicate all the anger of being scorned as femme fatales. And in another track, they might approach the same theme by blithely dismissing their lover as a liar while paying homage to the looks of classic Hollywood. During their tenure, they just might have a chance to top the charts in Japan, where they'll discuss their relationship with fame and express the mixed emotions that come with growing into women and sharing eternal bonds from friendships whose depth and strength will be tested with time. Girl groups can express wistfulness and heartache about their ties to other women without arousing the suspicion of a patriarchal society that polices and limits the emotional breadth and capacity of men and boys. Men in power falsely claim that stoicism is an act of strength, but there is a growing number of male artists that lean into androgyny, gasping for air, trying to feel anything, under the rising tide against any movement that asserts that femininity is a valid human experience. When male artists display any traditionally feminine quality, their fans who are women and femmes will praise their faves, but some of them might dismiss female artists for doing the same thing. What is the reason for this internalized misogyny? I've decided to temporarily replace my frustration with compassion, and I've come to the conclusion that for these fans, the fantasy offered by boy groups is easier to adopt. Perhaps the expression of femininity displayed by most girl groups reflects the standards that many fans will never attain without seriously harming themselves, so some fans decide to avoid it entirely. Maybe it's easier to pretend that you can meet a young, handsome male idol and be a doting Nuna, a term of endearment a man would use for a woman that's a few years older, or a beloved girlfriend, rather than having to re-experience the trauma of misogyny when you see how members of girl groups lose weight and have their faces change over time in a never-ending attempt to look 19 for the rest of their lives. I've had a different experience. As a dark-skinned, tall, black woman that some would assume plays some sport, my fandom of boy groups starts with a weekend of devouring as much content as possible before having my interest wane into a less personal appreciation for their musical contributions. I've realized it may be because I never saw myself as fitting into the narrative that boy groups presented. Even if there is no female interest in their music videos, even if they describe their ideal type as someone who's caring and funny, I'm very aware that most of them are attracted to someone who looks like I do. Sure, I can joke around and have a fangirl moment, but the ugly truth of beauty standards in Korea makes it hard to fully buy into the boyfriend or playboy characters that male entertainers portray in their professional lives. Instead, I prefer to be the supportive friend of girl groups and female artists. While I will never be able to replicate a waist making it smaller with the right exercises, protein shakes, or absence of food entirely, I can be inspired by the dedication that these women have to being good at their craft. I love watching these talented individuals grow as vocalists and storytellers and continually change concepts to keep the public's interest. I love seeing the fire in their eyes as they perform on stage, daring to be dismissed because they're from a small company, or they debuted in their mid-20s, or they decide to get out of the rat race entirely, get married, and have kids. Marginalization creates so much pain. On the flip side, I've seen it put a fire under a group to break barriers while leading with their uniqueness. While some would have seen being in a girl group as a negative, Girls' Generation has kept going, and the nuances of their feminine experience have given the Korean public classic pop culture moments as well as timeless anthems for anyone else who has been placed in the shadows by society. I encourage these staunch boy group fans to forsake their not like the other girls mentality. As you learn to be comfortable in your own gender expression, don't repeat the sins of your oppressors. Don't dismiss traditional femininity because it looks different from your own journey. Don't buy into the misogynist view that girl groups have to mirror boy groups by wearing the same clothes and singing the same songs, or appeal to the male gaze by wearing sexy clothing in order for their music to be interesting. Instead, let's tell girls and women that we are listening to them in every stage of life. Instead, let's tell women and girls that we are listening to them in every stage of life. Whether it's when they're young and they're holding a lollipop and talking about kissing someone, or when they're a little older wearing a suit while telling boy groups that they can beat any challenge, a young woman's voice should mean something and hold weight. When these ladies grow up and return to music, let's let them know that we are anticipating what they have to say next because we see them as individuals and we are curious about their personal interests and thoughts. Let's not push them aside when their company no longer cares about their contributions to a greater collective. If we say we care, let's actually be there from debut to disbandment and beyond. Let's ensure our time and dollars show women that they can have viable careers and full lives when the world tells them to retire. If not, a company headed by some shady older man isn't the only problem creating underrated girl groups. Your behavior as a consumer is what is allowing these men to get away with training these women, giving them a successful debut and maybe a few comebacks, and then shelving them once they get the original idea of duplicating their girl group success with a boy group. The second reason I started this podcast, and why I continue to love Korean entertainment in general, is my admiration for the incredible women who don't allow life or society to put their dreams to rest. I think a prequel to the beginning of this podcast would begin with my viewing of Sister Slam Dunk. It's still one of my favorite reality shows. I enjoyed seeing comedians and actresses in their late 20s to mid 40s have the opportunity to form a girl group, along with established Korean idols. While we also saw the disregard for Miss A, I appreciated seeing the joy of these women when the mentors helped them see themselves in a new light. A beautiful, brilliant comedian is told that her physicality provides inspiration for the choreography. You can see the emotion in her eyes when the light is on her for the first time, and people aren't laughing. Instead, they're just admiring her. While I wanted to see the dreams of all the cast members, seeing them fulfill an actress's dream of debuting in a girl group was very satisfying. While there are many women in Western entertainment that continue to perform into their 40s and beyond, seeing these ladies grow personally and professionally over time helped me realize that I could do the same in a space that seemed out of reach. A second moment that informed my podcast is Park Bom's comeback spring. Park Bom had been shamed after smuggling in pharmaceuticals that were prescribed for her mental health during her time in America, but they were banned in Korea. As a girl group member, she did not receive understanding from the public or protection from her label, and once her group ceased their activities, it seemed like she would fade into obscurity. But like the spring, she returned. 2019 was the moment where I wondered if I would ever return to the person I was before, and seeing her sing again strengthened me to start that quest to find myself again. I have definitely talked about my feelings about Bom before, but I can talk about her and so many female artists for extended periods of time. I saw there weren't many spaces for Black women and femmes who are fans of female artists and girl groups, so I wanted to create the space I felt was missing. I enjoy podcasts, so I was initially excited to make my own. However, I definitely didn't realize how much work it would take. For anyone that fears the impending workload of editing their own audio and cringes at the thought of hearing their own voice, I promise you that once you find your medium of choice, that you will remember the joy you felt when talking about your favorite comeback of the month, or year, or of years gone by. Joy is the third reason why I have this podcast. My love of watching and discussing entertainment moves me forward. Whenever I'm ready to return to K-pop after a much-needed break, there's always a song that reminds me of why I love it. I remember being in a slump for a while, and then I saw the thumbnail of Brown Eyed Girls leader Jaya sharing her latest comeback with a group of children. I looked up a translation of the lyrics, and as you might have guessed, I teared up. Part of what often keeps me offline is the regret I have for starting my creative journey too late. Because my interests were often solo pursuits with no realistic job trajectory, I decided to prioritize what I thought I could control and ended up losing my sense of self. However, there was a feeling of regret that I couldn't shake, and I knew that I owed it to myself to try my best. When I questioned that gnawing feeling inside that pushes me forward, I returned to Jaya's song, Dear Rude, which addressed somebody that asked her why she hasn't settled down and gotten married. My favorite translated lyric is, there is no fear in dreaming. I want to fully pursue my dreams, and I can't do that from a place of fear. So here I am, promising myself and you that I'll take this podcast as far as I can. As Jaya says, it's never too late, ever. And I thank her and so many female artists for proving that to be true. What is your advice for anyone that wants to start a podcast? My first tip for any creative is give yourself time. This has two parts, the first of which is to grow in your comfort zone and do what you can with what you have right now. I believe that everyone has a fire in them that drives them to find and walk in their purpose, and that light will never die as long as you keep it alive. That may mean that you have an independent film that you're planning for years because you've been too busy at work, but you add to the screenplay whenever you get a chance. That may mean that you outline your book on Post-it notes and complete it during the summer after graduation. As long as you tend to your gifts bit by bit, I'm sure that your dream will come to pass. Also, give yourself time by having realistic expectations for yourself. I'd like to have a monthly podcast that provides public and Patreon episodes, but for a while, I'll have to prioritize my Patreon to focus on my current responsibilities. And that's okay. You might have a podcast, but you can only record once a year. And if that's the case, fully accept and plan for that. Your project is your joy, and you need to build in a way that's fulfilling and realistic for you. That way, what is supposed to add to your life and spread the love inside of you to others can do just that. While creativity can yield net positive results, it is hard work. My second piece of advice is to be willing to set other things aside. There might be times where you can't go out because you can only work on your project during the weekends. Lastly, know your working style. If you're someone like me that has to complete everything in one sitting, you have to either stop procrastinating or know that you'll be online for several hours at a time because an album review took longer than expected. If you have bad habits in other areas of your life, they'll flow over to your creative process. Even if you can't prioritize your passions right now, focus on perfecting the processes in your daily life as much as you can so your side hustle or time-consuming hobby will be a natural fit. With that said, thanks for hanging out with me today. Let's close out the podcast. God, I thank you for helping me make this episode. I completely underestimated how difficult it would be to be so vulnerable, but I thank you for all the people you've used to encourage me to meet this moment. I pray that you will provide strength and wisdom for anyone else facing an emotional or mental block that threatens to stop them from using their gifts and talents. I pray that you will remind them of the future they have on the other side of that promotion, new side hustle, or any other blessing disguised as a challenge. I pray that you will remind them that you have provided for all of their needs for your riches and glory, and if they trust you, you can work in them and through them to accomplish more than they could ever imagine. I pray that you will give them the discipline to give up whatever distraction is stealing their focus, and you will give them the desire and drive to focus their energy on what you put in their hearts to do. As the next episode begins, I pray that you will prepare the listeners' hearts for my perspective, and I pray that you will continue to use me to create a safe space for others to share their experiences too. I thank you for this incredible platform that you've given me, and I pray that you will bless Ashley for giving me and other content creators this opportunity. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. That's all I have for today. Remember that you're wonderfully and fearfully made, and I'll let you know when I've got something else to say. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!